Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can find me at San Jose Hockey Now, NBC Sharks, and on Twitter at Sheng_Peng.
And I'm Keegan McNally. You can find me at San Jose Hockey Now, as well as at my website, half-wallhockey.com, and on Twitter at halfwall_hockey or at halfwall_hockey. This week, we've got a very exciting episode with a interesting player interview to talk about. But
Today
Shang,
we
why don't you
have
kick us off?
Mario Ferraro coming right out of the captain's skate. I spoke with Mario, and the Sharks' alternate captain talks about his YouTube channel, Youngest of Plugs, coming back in full effect. He's had 2 episodes under the last couple of weeks. Also, too, he talked about the Erik Karlsson trade and the balance for himself between wanting to add more to his game, but not doing too much.
Yeah, I think his YouTube channel is going to come for ours in terms of popularity, so we got to watch out, Shang.
We're coming for his. Yeah, his channel is definitely more popular than ours. So
yeah, for sure. If you haven't checked it out, it's a great YouTube channel. It's a lot of fun to watch. But this week we've got tiny bits of Sharks news, not a whole lot. It's still, I think, in the next like 2-3 weeks, we're gonna have lots of news.
Yeah, rookie face-off next week.
Yeah, exactly. But right now, all we've got to talk about is the rookie face-off roster being released, some Doug Wilson news, and then we also have an interesting topic to discuss about the future of the Sharks franchise. Basically, what happens if a rebuild goes wrong or right, and what makes a successful rebuild? I think it's an interesting time to talk about that subject because rebuild is on the minds of Sharks fans. But let's start with Sharks news. So this week, the rookie face-off roster was released. The rookie face-off is a cool tournament. It's something that the NHL has been kind of promoting in the past couple of years. It's not uncommon in the past to have like small scrimmages between clubs, that kind of thing, to showcase your rookies, your upcoming prospects. But it feels like every year the rookie face-off tournaments get bigger and bigger. So this year the Sharks are going to be participating in a rookie face-off with themselves, LA, Arizona, Colorado, and Vegas from September 15th to the 18th. And today the Sharks released their rookie face-off roster. Shang, did you get a look at the roster? What were some of your impressions from it?
Yeah, I was surprised. I think to some degree, maybe we all are. Wasn't sure if William Eklund was going to be on it just because he's an older player. And Thomas Bordeleau too. And so actually they're bringing Thomas Bordeleau, also Daniil Gushin, Tristan Robbins, and Henry Thrun. So a lot of NHL experience, I think, relative for rookie face-off roster. And so that kind of caught my eye. But of course, for a guy like Eklund, coming off his shoulder injury, maybe it's a good way to kind of get back into the speed of things. But anyway, I thought that they might hold him off for the actual preseason. But anyway, that's a good sign that he is on the mend. Also, too, I think I caught my eye that not a lot of the Sharks 2023 draft picks are coming to this. I think some of them are NCAA things like Will Smith and Brandon Svoboda. So those are NCAA things, right? But like so right now we have Quentin Musty, first rounder, second rounder, Casper Halttunen, and fourth rounder, Luca Cagnoni. And I'm also interested in watching too. This is going to be kind of our first chance to watch Valtteri Puoli, Magnus Krona, and Georgi Romanov against a competition that isn't internal, isn't the Sharks. All these guys are at development camp, but of course that's just against their fellow Sharks. And also too, caught my eye that only 3 invites, and all of them from the queue, and all forwards.
Sure.
Ben Allison, Felix Gagnon, and Joseph Hennenberry.
Yeah, the all of the Q Acadie Bathurst like connections there. I was interested to see how that came about. I guess we'll have to try and dig a little more to find out how that happened, where those people came from. They have a couple of guys from the Barracuda from last year that were playing at the end of the season that are going to kind of carry over into this tournament, which is interesting. My sticking point or obviously the people that you mentioned are interesting, but Gannon Larocque is going to play, which will be his first action in 8 months, I think, since January, where he had like 5 games for Victoria before going back on the injured list from his hip.
Well,
So
let's not forget though that during Dev Camp, guys like William Eklund were on the roster, but they didn't play in a prospect scrimmage. So I guess it's no guarantee that these guys will play, but
sure.
chances are they'll play. And Todd Marchand told us on the first episode that Gannon should be ready for the rookie face-off, and well, here he is.
Mhm. Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting that he's slotted in there. There's not a lot of right-handed Ds on that team as well. It's got like Shakir Mukhamadullin, Hooley, Thrun, Kenyoni, that all of these guys are lefties. And Larocque seems to be the only
Yeah, only
righty.
Larocque and Frisch.
Frisch, yeah,
Yeah,
who
the
was a
Barracuda guy.
Barracuda.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously, like you said, we're missing a lot of the NCAA guys, like Will Smith. We're missing Brandon Svoboda. We're missing Cameron Lund, Michael Fisher, a couple of guys from the past 2 drafts. And then we're missing our 2 Swedish brothers that are not brothers, Bistad and Havlet, who were drafted in the first and second round of 2022.
Right. But they're in the SHL, so
yeah, they're already starting to play important games. I think they're just wrapping up the preseason in the SHL, so it's not like a full complement of Sharks prospects for next week or 2 weeks from now, whatever it is. But it's it's a pretty good showing. Like you said,
it's a pretty good looking group. I mean, I looked at just the Vegas roster, and the Vegas is a good thing. Let's just say it's a good thing that they won the Stanley Cup before they had to rely on their prospects to carry them over to another wave of contention. So it's a good thing that they have their chip.
I didn't actually see Arizona's roster. That would be interesting to see who they've got on there. I don't know if they've got any.
Oh, they haven't released it yet. Okay, well, I'm looking for it. Cooley should be there, right? So that's exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I just didn't know if they took any of the 2 Russians that they drafted. Probably not. They're probably off playing in Russia, but be interesting. Either way, super excited. Next week we'll have some coverage. Well, not next week's episode, but the week after, have some coverage about the rookie.
I'll be in Vegas. So.
Oh yeah, you're gonna follow the team there.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome, cool.
That's my job, Keegan.
I've heard that before, that might be your job. It's the off season. I don't know when people get back from
It's not the off season. I was at a captain's skate today, so
this is true.
Off season is over.
Speaking of guys that are no longer in their off-season mode, Doug Wilson.
That's good segue.
That's a really good segue. So Doug Wilson, obviously famed general manager for the San Jose Sharks, former general manager, has been hired by the Pittsburgh Penguins as senior advisor of hockey operations. This is after Kyle Dubas was promoted or transferred to the role of GM after being named president of, I actually don't know what his former job title was, but he was transferred to the GM role, and DW is coming in as a senior advisor. But
Dubas is, I think, both president of hockey operations and GM.
So he was.
I read the Penguins press release about Doug. So
I didn't know if he transferred over to GM and left.
No, he just has both titles. So.
He just has both.
Yeah.
But anyways, Sheng, your thoughts on Doug Wilson coming out of retirement to join the Pittsburgh staff?
Well, he's not coming out of retirement because he never actually retired. But no, it's great though. Yeah, Doug obviously had to step down for medical reasons at the beginning of the 2021-22 season, and stepped down later that year. And we weren't really sure what his next step was going to be. And we saw him come back to San Jose for Doug Wilson Appreciation Night, which was early in the season. But at that point, it still seemed, it seemed like he was pretty good, but maybe didn't quite seem like he was necessarily going to come back. He did say back then he wanted to come back, but again, we weren't sure that the health was going to cooperate. But I think it's fantastic news. And if you're Kyle Dubas, there's obviously a great resource of knowledge. Obviously, Doug wasn't just the GM of the Sharks; he was director of player personnel. He's worked with the NHLPA, Hockey Canada, and then obviously before that, he was a Hall of Fame player with the Sharks and the Blackhawks. So there's all kinds of experience to lean on there. And of course, everybody has noticed. It's just hilarious to think about. We're coming on the 5-year anniversary of the Erik Karlsson trade to San Jose. And who would have thought on September 13th, 2018, when that trade went down, that 5 years later, we'd be talking about Erik and Doug still together, but in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I'm very happy for Doug Wilson. I think this is seems like the right fit for him coming off of, his health issues and everything. By retirement, I mean like semi-retirement stoppage. It was an interesting kind of way that he left San Jose.
Sure.
And we didn't really know if he was going to come back to the NHL in this kind of capacity. But I think he's a smart hockey mind. He's been that way for 20, 30 years. He should be in hockey. So, I'm happy for him. I have a little bit of a tiny twinge of being upset that it's back to the Penguins because,
Oh, right, because the 2016 final too, right? So
it feels a little bit like they're trying to rekindle some of that like magic that Doug Wilson had with the end of the Sharks like veterans.
That's actually an excellent point. Like, which team in
Mhm.
NHL probably most reminds you of the 2015-16 Sharks veterans like Thornton and Marlowe and Pavelski was older at that point too. Yeah, it could be the
Probably
Penguins.
the Penguins.
Right,
Obviously,
yeah.
the Penguins have all the cups to back it up, but that's neither here nor there. But I am still
let's
happy for Doug.
not cloud the issue with facts. All right.
Mhm. But Sheng, I mean, I'm just full of good segues today. I don't know if you noticed. But speaking of former Cup winners, what we're gonna do today in our main
And speaking
segment.
of Doug Wilson, actually, and how Doug Wilson
Speaking of
built
Doug Wilson.
teams.
Yeah, this is, this is a perfect segue. We're going to talk about what makes a Stanley Cup winner. What makes a team go from zero to hero? What makes a team win the Stanley Cup in the NHL? And this is going to go back, to about the
beginning
first
of the salary
lockout.
cap era, because that's
The salary cap
that's when
era,
you have
2006.
that limit on how much you can spend. That changes kind of
Mhm.
the calculation of then obviously ELCs and bridge contracts and younger players sort of become more important in some ways.
Let's call it the modern NHL when you can no longer smoke cigarettes on the bench and I don't know, all sorts of fun
Or
things
light
you could
money on
do.
fire and spend it
Or
on
light money on fire and give
Theo Fleury and
Yager
Valerie
14
Kamensky if you're
million.
the Rangers. So
Yeah, give Yager $14 million and nobody else get anything on your team. That kind of thing. The modern era of the NHL.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is basically talk about the ways that you can build a team. Because there's a lot of talk basically about what happens if the Sharks don't succeed in this rebuild, or what happens if the Sharks are too good next
Well,
year. What
yeah,
happens if
specifically this year,
they
right? The
win too much?
2023-24
Mhm.
season. I've read some comments like what the Sharks actually are kind of good because they picked up a lot of reclamation projects, but guys that had been good before, like Duclair and Granlund and Hoffman, and somehow it magically comes together and the team ends up like a 10th place team in the West, not 10th place in the NHL, 10th place in the West, or even they eke out a wild card spot. And what does that
Mhm.
do? How does that ruin the rebuild? Because all of a sudden, instead of picking in the top 5 like you're hoping for, you're all of a sudden you're picking number 10 or 15 or something like that.
Yeah, and it's important to keep in mind that the Sharks already have one top 5 pick on their, in their repertoire, I
Yep,
guess, with
and then
Will
number
Smith.
7 in Eklund too.
They have a number 7 Eklund, and they also theoretically should have a number 3 in Stutzla. Not that we're counting
No,
that one or anything,
we
but
definitely, the facts. Yeah, that you
the
cannot
point is,
count that.
no, I mean, but the point is the Sharks have been bad for a while,
Sure. Yes.
and they're bad enough to get high picks. That's
Mhm.
like the baseline thing. They're bad enough that even if they succeed a little bit, say like they get the 11th overall pick, like they did in 2022, they're still going to get good players out of the drafts because they were keeping all of their picks, right?
Sure.
They're not trading them away.
Well, they
So
traded
just
back to get more picks, and
or
so
they trade
far,
back.
it's looked good who they've traded or who they've selected with the picks they traded for.
Mhm. Point is, they're bad, and they're probably going to continue to be bad, no matter if they're first, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever they are going to be. So let's start with the 2006
Yeah, we're gonna go
Cup
through
winner.
all the Stanley Cup winners in the salary cap era. But before we
Mhm.
jump to the 2006 Hurricanes, I wanted to mention too that Keegan and I have talked a lot about it, kind of where we see what the Sharks are doing, our opinion of it, and what we've kind of term it as or see it as is something like a hybrid rebuild. Whereas there is obviously emphasis on draft picks and stockpiling draft picks, or if you're going to trade draft picks, you're trading back for more picks. And so there's emphasis on draft picks, on prospect development, so that's the rebuild part of it, but it's coupled with trying to fill a competitive team still, not trying to necessarily bottom out. Last year, the Sharks emphasized signing guys, I would say more high competitive guys, right? High compete guys like Sturm, like Benning, trading for Kunin, trading for Lawrence. So guys like that, that seems sort of to be like, so if you look at maybe last offseason as more of a culture, trying to establish the culture that Mike wanted in place, along with stalwarts that they trusted, like Logan Couture and Tomas Hertl, adding guys, again, those culture guys, right? And this past offseason has a little bit more about maybe just kind of taking swings on guys that can, maybe if they all hit, maybe the team is surprisingly good. Or if they don't, a couple of those guys are good, you can flip them for what? More draft picks, right? And, they added nobody that has a contract longer than 2 years. So go down the line: Granlund, Rutta, Hoffman, Duclair, Zadina. So guys that, are big names. Most of them are big names. And most of them are seen as having upside, like a Zadina, or in the recent past, basically everybody else, they've been highly productive NHL players. And so again, so it's a little bit of both. It's kind of they are
Mhm.
rebuilding, but are also trying to be competitive. And you hear a lot of pushback toward that in terms of, well, why aren't the Sharks just out and out tanking? And what I think the research that I've done showed is, besides looking, and I think a lot of the research into this kind of stuff, I feel, is limited to just the cup winners. And I think that's too limiting. It's not just about, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's not just about winning the cup. GMs, like, there is no sure way to win a cup. There's no formula you can follow and you'll win a cup absolutely sure, right? But what you
Sure.
can try to do is you try to build a team that is good enough to win the Stanley Cup.
Mhm.
And then at that point, you're hoping for a few bounces, a few whatever, right, to get you the ultimate prize, right? But that's really the best you can do as a GM, is just to build a team that's in the conversation for a good number of years. And so I want to look beyond just the cup winners, but also teams, groups of teams that didn't win the cup. Examples of that, just to not going to give all of them away right now, but we're going to talk about the Ducks, the recent Ducks, 2015, 2017 Western Conference finalists, and they also had a 5-year kind of playoff run there. The New York Rangers, 2012, 2014, 2015, so 3 or 4 years, they made the Eastern Conference Finals. They made the final 1 year, and of course, we'll also touch on Doug Wilson's Sharks too, who don't need to get. We all know sort of the tortured history of Doug's teams, but they were also highly successful in a lot of ways too, which we'll touch on. And so anyway, I think the end point that we're going to come to and see what you guys think is that there's really a lot of ways to build a winner. Many ways to skin a cat, so to speak. It's not just tank, tank, tank. It's not even just like just get top picks and that's all you need. And so we'll kind of dive into that. But part of the focus too is to point out too that a lot of these top picks on cup teams, they didn't happen because the teams are trying to tank. and we'll get into that what that means. But anyway, before we get more sidetracked, let's start with the 2006 Hurricanes. We're just kind of run through these teams. We're not going to give a long bios on all these teams, but the 2006 Hurricanes. So they're a really interesting team. If you look at that roster, they had just one kind of top 5 pick that played a big role on the team. That was Eric Stahl, the number 2 pick of the 2003 draft. If you look at the rest of the team, Justin Williams was a younger player, but they acquired him via trade. Their goalie, Cam Ward, a great performance that that year kind of came out of nowhere. He was a first round pick, but he's the 25th pick. But if you look at the rest of the team, and I try to weigh it on ice. I just looked at ice time in the playoffs, basically, and just who was used the most for forwards and defense. And Brindamore on a team, Brett Hedican, Sharks broadcaster, Aaron Ward, the defenseman Aaron Ward, Corey Stillman, Kaberla, Thomas. Oh no, Frantisek. I'm getting confused. There's 2 Kaberla. I think it's Frantisek, Mark Recchi, and Doug Waite of the Sharks. Now these guys are all 30 somethings. And it's a really interesting team. You don't see a lot of teams kind of built like that these days, but they won a Stanley Cup. And I think the one thing I want to point out, their one premium pick here, Eric Stahl, the 2002-03 Hurricanes, that's the year that Stahl got drafted. That team was not designed to be a tank team. That team actually had made the final the year before, 2002. It was a little of an upset trip to the final, surprise trip to the final, but they made it to the final. The next year, according to the Hockey News yearbook, which of course you guys know I've been leaning on a lot recently, we have our top 5 Sharks prospects, top 10 Sharks prospects discussion through the Hockey News. Anyway, though, the 2002-03 Hockey News yearbook picked the Hurricanes to be 8th in the East. So that doesn't sound like a tank team. Just what happens, guys get old all of a sudden. Just the team isn't what they expected, and they land the number 2 pick, but they weren't trying, they weren't tanking.
Yeah, 100%. They got a combination of extremely good veterans at the same time as having one I think it was Eric Stahl's second season. I think 03-04.
He had 100 points that year. I think that was his.
03-04 he had a good season, and then the 05-06 he was like lights out. And he had that benefit of having a year off in the middle of it to kind of develop a little bit more. When the 04-05 season kind of got canceled, but it was a lightning in a bottle kind of team, and it showed because the next little while I don't think the Hurricanes were very good for the next few years after that. So just an interesting thing. It was, yes, they had a good pick, but it's not like every single player was a high pick and they tanked for years to get it, and then they finally won their cup kind of thing. So I think we could firmly say this one is not a tanking team that won the cup.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah. All right. We're going to do this judgment after every single one. Was it a tanking team or was it not that won this cup? So we got 1-0 right now. All right. Let's move on to the 2007 Anaheim Ducks, who won the cup in 2007.
And that team, they had no high picks of their own, really, at least as in key roles. I mean, Ryan Getzlaw was an important player on the team, but he was the 19th pick of his draft year. And obviously they had Chris Pronger and Scott Niedermayer, who were very, very high picks back in the day, but I don't think they count because obviously Chris Pronger was acquired via trade. Scott Niedermayer was a UFA. Another important defenseman on that team, Bolshelman, who's kind of forgotten in that group. He played 30 minutes a night in the playoffs, and he was acquired via trade. Their goalie, J.S. Jaguar, was acquired via trade. Guys like Teemu Selanne, but Teemu Selanne was a high pick back in the day, but he was, I think, 36 at this point. He was a UFA signing, coming back to Anaheim after a few years away. Sammy Paulson played a lot, a great third-line two-way center. He was acquired via trade. Rob Niedermayer, I believe he was I don't remember if he was UFA or trade, but he wasn't drafted by the Ducks. He was a high pick by the Panthers a long time ago, but once again, though, not drafted by the Ducks. And most interestingly, in their roster, they gave a lot of minutes to Andy McDonald and Chris Kunitz, and those guys were both undrafted college free agents. Kind of goes to show you that talent comes from a lot of places. But I think the point in the end, though, is that this is not a team that was built by Anaheim, pulling the cord and and tanking either.
Yeah, I think it probably helped that they had Getzlaf and Corey Perry making very little money during that time
Oh,
period.
sure, that's more, especially
Yeah.
Getzlaf, because
Mhm.
Getzlaf was a big part. I don't know if Perry was playing, but Perry wasn't as. That's why I didn't mention him, because
So
he
Perry
wasn't
had
in like the top six of sort of
sure.
ice time. But Getzlaf was
He had
though.
15 points in 21 games. He did well for
Yes, he
being
did though.
like a
Yeah, good point.
rookie
Yeah,
or
fair. Yeah,
rookie plus or something like that. But he but either way, they did benefit from those like young guys being cheap at the time
sure.
because this was like the salary cap era, the beginning of it. But you're right, like the main guys on that team were dudes that from the 90s, right? It was guys like
That's
who
the
we've
way to
heard
put it.
about
Dudes from the '90s. Yeah.
dudes from the 90s that were just on a team together that, they weren't drafted really. They just were acquired and then they made
If
a
I
great
if I
team.
remember correctly, too, Scott Niedermayer only signed with the Ducks because they had Rob on the team, and so that's kind of like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
built the all-time defense, and it just because you employed one guy's brother, who happened to be a pretty good player himself too. I don't want to take anything
Yeah.
away from Rob Niedermayer's career, but like, yeah,
Yeah. It's an interesting Stanley Cup, and they had J.S. Shiger, which, yeah, it's good that he got a cup too. Like, but I think we can say that although Getzlaf and Perry, Getzlaf wasn't even a high pick. He was
right. And
middle of the
Perry
fourth
was
round.
even later. Perry was, I think, 27th. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
28th. Yeah.
28th. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah,
So it's good that they were valuable, but they weren't, top five picks. So
right.
we're gonna call it not a tanking team.
Definitely not. Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, 100%. Just a competitive team that happened to win the cup at the right
Yeah.
time. And we're good for many years after that too,
They
which we'll
got
talk about too.
the right kind of superstar veterans, and these guys Pronger, Needham are in their 30s, but they aged well, which obviously doesn't always happen when you take leaps of faith on older star players.
Mhm. Older star players. Speaking of older star players, we're gonna move on to the 2008 Detroit Red Wings. I'm good at
Yeah,
segueing.
your segue game is on
I
point
got this.
today. Yeah,
Let's talk about the 2008 Wings. The back-to-back Wings Penguins kind of thing. This is the first
right.
iteration. The 2008 Red Wings. What's our verdict? Tanking or no tanking?
I mean, I think you look at the roster; it's pretty obvious. I look at some of the key names that jump out. Lidstrom, obviously, Rafalski. Lidstrom was a late pick back in the day of the Red Wings. Rafalski was, I think, a college free agent that was signed by the Devils, undrafted. Kronwall was an important defenseman for them, first round pick, but he was 29th.
Mhm.
Zetterberg and Datsuk, famously very late picks who turned out to be
Sure.
Hall of Fame caliber players. Brad Stewart, a Sharks defenseman, was a high pick back in the day, but that was for the Sharks. And by the time he landed with the Red Wings, he wasn't
Same.
necessarily a
Yeah.
number one defenseman, whatever, right? And so he landed via trade, and then Hasek, their goalie, obviously was much older. I think in his early 40s, and then Johan Franz is another key player, but he was also another late pick. And so, yeah, I think this is definitively not a team that is built by the tank.
I was just Googling when Dominic Hasek was drafted because I was very curious. He was drafted in the 10th
89,
round.
I think, or something like that. Yeah, I think the
Yeah, he was
80s. He was
drafted
drafted in the 80s.
80,
So he,
83,
yeah, he wasn't the
10th
90s. He was the 80s.
10th round. Anyway, just interesting little factoid. But yeah, it's a team that um they it's a holdover, right? Because they had a bunch of these guys that were on their prior
Sure.
team,
The
early
prior
2000s
dynasty teams.
before.
Yep.
Yeah, the prior dynasty that kind of came together when they got Datsuk and Zetterberg to really, be their first line players that they
Yeah, carry
are.
the torch. Yeah, because those guys were debuting back in
Mhm.
2002 and
Yep.
2003 and back then. Sure.
So it's not a tanking team because it's more like an end of a dynasty team, I think, and that there's not really any high picks that really kind of carried them in the playoffs, really.
hmm
There might be a few in there that we're missing, or there might have been high picks in there, but I don't know. Not sure
Again,
either way.
I'm looking at I know that there's going to be like we're going to get to like the 2011 Bruins, right? But and
Mhm.
I'll mention it. I also mentioned in advance, like yeah, Tyler Seguin was a number 2 pick, but he played 10 minutes a night in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and
Yeah.
so that's not that's kind of that's not a great example a high pick, leading you to the cup. But anyway, moving on.
So we are 3-0 for
Mhm.
non-tanking teams. 2009, the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think this might be the first time. What do you think, Shane?
Yeah, yeah. They're an interesting team too, because if you look at, we've talked about the 2006 Hurricanes, 2007 Ducks, and 2008 Wings. The Penguins are the first Stanley Cup final team in the post cap era that's built by top five picks, really.
Mhm.
Top five picks by the team. Crosby, Malkin, Stahl, and Fleury, Jordan Stahl, and Fleury. But when you look at how they landed on all these picks, right? There's only one of these years that I looked at the roster and thought, oh yeah, this team is trying to tank. And so just a quick run through of it. So 2002-03, which led to the Fleury pick, they still had Mario Lemieux on that team. And
Mhm.
I don't think that they were thought of as a team that was going to out and out tank. I think they still had Kovalev. They still had good players, and they just weren't very good. And so they ended up in the in the junkyard. Maybe the Malkin year, that's 2003-04. They still had Mario, but the roster around Mario was very, very poor. And so maybe you can argue that they were gunning for Ovechkin, and it ended up with a pretty good consolation prize in Malkin. The Crosby year, the 2005 draft, of course, if everyone remembers, there was no season that year. And everyone actually had a chance at the number one pick in Sidney Crosby. The way the lottery worked for that was the teams that missed the playoffs, all the years in the playoffs in previous years, they had, I think, three lottery balls, teams like the Penguins, other teams that blanked missed the playoffs in years prior. The Sharks weren't as lucky. The Sharks had just one lottery ball, but those are pretty good odds, though. Those are odds that you take if you're the Sharks or any team that was on a more competitive side in those days. You have one lottery ball chance. It was 48 overall lottery balls, and so the Penguins had a 1 of 16 chance. The Sharks had a 1 of 48 chance at Sidney Crosby and the number one pick. And the Sharks obviously didn't win out on that, but yeah, that is definitely not. I mean, there was no tank to be had there. No one had any idea that the 2004-05 season would get canceled, and that's how they would figure out that lottery. And finally, the last one here, Jordan Stahl, 2005-06, also not a tank, because if you look at that team, ended up very poorly. But remember, that was Sidney Crosby's rookie season. That also was Mario Lemieux's last season. And so they tried to build, they added a lot of, speaking of guys, 90s guys, right? They signed in offseason Ziggy Palffy, John LeClaire, Mark Recchi, maybe not guys they're not the 100-point players in their prime, 40-goal scorers like they were in their prime, but still very good players. And so they were trying to add veterans around the Crosby, Fleury, Lemieux kind of nucleus, and it just blew up in their face. and they ended up with the pick, the number 2 pick, I think, Jordan Stahl. And anyway, so my overall verdict on the tank is I would say the 2004 Malcolm pick. Yes, I'm going to concede that one, but other years,
Sure.
I would not say so much.
I would say just because they were bad all the other years. I know there's a lot of reasons why they weren't or were bad, and there was one year in there where they were just a really rough team. And Lemieux was getting older. I don't know. I think we should rule it as they tanked. What do you
Sure,
think?
fine.
All right, we'll do 3 to
Fine.
1.
I mean, obviously, tank. If we give them even one floor years where you can argue that they tanked, then yeah, the tank helped them.
Yeah,
It
and
helped them
you're
get
right.
Malkin too. So yeah,
It's
yeah. So
it's tank plus just the ultimate luck of getting Malkin and Crosby in back-to-back
sure.
years, kind of thing. That is
Yep.
just astronomical. Can change any franchise. So yeah,
Right.
we'll do 3 to 1. 2010 Chicago Blackhawks.
Right. And so that one is going to lend more toward the argument of tanking. Obviously Patrick
Sure.
Kane, 2007. I think that team, 2006 or seven Blackhawks. I think that team did kind of trend more toward that. Taves was the 2006 draft, I believe. Right, that's one that actually I going to catch up. I didn't look up the Taves year.
Mhm.
That was 2006. Is that right?
Jonathan Taves is 2006, third
Yeah.
overall.
So even though so that was obviously a high pick, but that off season, or I'm sorry, the off season before the 2005-06 season, the Blackhawks had signed Nikolai Javibulin, who had just won a Stanley Cup with the Lightning, to a big contract. So I don't think they were trying to tank when they ended up with Taves. So again, like the Penguins, there's 1 year with Kane where you can kind of pointer that where maybe they didn't try to fill the best team. Definitely not the Taves year. But otherwise, though, if you look at the rest of that Blackhawks team, they're just built with smart trades, late picks, and free agent signings. So guys like Niemi, who was I think a free agent signing, older free agent signing from Europe. Duncan Keith, who was later picked. Seabrook was the 14th pick of his draft, but again, that's not a high pick. Jarmison, Brian Campbell, Dave Bolin. Dave Bolin was a second round pick. Marion Hossa, obviously a great player, but I think they acquired him UFA. Patrick Sharp, they stole him from the Flyers. He came from the Flyers organization. And Dustin Byfuglien, late pick. And so overall, yes, obviously you get a Patrick Kane. You tank for him. That leads to success. Otherwise, besides that, I would say that the like Taves again wasn't a tankier, I think.
And the other interesting thing is that the Taves pick, like Kane obviously is his own kind of thing. Like
Right.
Patrick Kane is a superstar, and Taves in his own right was a star, I think. But even in that draft, in the top 10 of that 2006 draft, there were like landmines in the top 10 that they could have drafted, right?
Right.
Like,
It wasn't like Kane was the consensus number one. Like
yeah,
I could have drafted Patrick Kane, right? But
exactly.
right. But
But
Jonathan Taves, though, high pick, but still, yeah. If I was
yeah,
a
they could have
GM, I could have
drafted.
been talked into drafting somebody else. So.
Yeah, so in that first round, they had Jordan Stahl, second overall by
Mhm.
Pittsburgh, which Jordan Stahl, an amazing third line center for his entire career. That's
Yeah, very
basically
good
it. Maybe
player.
second line sometimes, but he's not Jonathan Taves.
Sure.
Eric Johnson, a good middle pairing defenseman, maybe first line sometimes in his career. That's it for his entire career. That he was number one overall.
Right.
You have Derek Brassard at 6, Kyle Okposo at 7, Peter Mueller at 8, James Shepard at 9, Frolik at 10. Dudes that, like, yeah, had they misstepped and just picked a different guy, they might not be getting two Stanley or
Right.
however many Stanley Cups Chicago won.
Yeah.
So yes, you have to get high picks. You have to pick the right guy. I think is also the most important thing.
Yeah,
And
and
pick
I
the right
think
player.
that's what we're gonna come out with all this. Like, and we're not saying anything revolutionary. Like, you just have to draft
Mhm.
well. Doesn't matter where
Yeah.
you pick, and obviously your chances of landing a star player are higher the higher you pick. But there's no guarantees, and you can still do quite well. I've just looked at something. This isn't like the perfect way to look at it, but I looked at average games played for each pick, right? And
Mhm.
1 through 7, you have a pretty good chance of the average games played is in the 600 700s, right? The number one pick is an average of 830 games played. This is all number one picks from 1969 to 2022. So obviously it's also weighed. These newer picks haven't played as many games, but anyway, though, the takeaway that I get from this is that of course, ideally you want the number one pick. You want the no-brainer pick, right? But if you don't end up with it, you can still do quite well in other places as long as, like you mentioned, you draft intelligently and you pick Jonathan Taves instead of Kyle Okposo or something like that.
Yeah. So I don't know what to rule this one. I mean, I remember those Chicago teams being really, really
I mean, it's a
bad.
tank. I mean,
Like,
they the pink, like
okay.
Patrick Kane. So
Yeah, but they also just
I can
really,
give that one. I can give that one.
yeah, they got first overall. It kind of feels like a tank.
The point is also
But
too is that there's many ways to do it. So yes, tanking
yeah,
can be a valid way of trying to build a winning team. I'm not saying that it can't be, but I guess overall trying to say that it's not the only way.
Yeah, and you still got to get your Duncan Keiths in the second round, and you got to draft or you got to sign your Bufflins and your get your Hosas and Sharps and all that kind of stuff. You have to bring these guys in and make a winning team.
Yeah,
so
you always have to trick another GM into a stupid trade, like Patrick Sharp for, I think I looked at it, like Matt Ellison, who's so good job.
All right, Matt.
Good job.
All right, so 3-2. 3-2.
Blackhawks.
No tank versus tank. It's 3-2. 2011 Bruins is our next one.
Right, and this one, obviously you have Tyler Seguin, like I mentioned, and I actually I didn't have time to look back on this, but I don't know how the Bruins ended up with the number 2 pick, because the Bruins that year, the 2009-10 Bruins, and Seguin was a 2010 draft pick. Yeah, that was the Kessel draft. Yeah. Anyway, it could have, maybe that was, like, you know what? I think you're right. I think that was the.
I think it was a trade.
Yeah, that was Kessel. I think that was supposed to be Toronto's pick. Anyway, so that Bruins team was a great team, so they just lucked into being able to draft Tyler Seguin. But Seguin wasn't a big part of their championship team. Like I mentioned, Seguin, number 2 overall pick, 2010 draft. He played 10 minutes a night in the playoffs. Those are important, but those are not as, he wasn't a top 6 player. He wasn't a top 4 or forward. He wasn't a top 4 defenseman. And so the guys that I want to look at, the guys who are sort of the lead players on this 2011 Bruins Stanley Cup team, David Krejci, a 63rd overall pick. Nathan Horton, who was a top pick back in the day, but he was acquired via trade. Milan Lucic was the 50th pick. Patrice Bergeron, obviously, the 45th pick. Brad Marchand, the 71st pick. Zdeno Chara, 56. Dennis Seidenberg, 172nd. Andrew Ference was the 208th pick. Johnny Boychuk, the 61st. Also, actually, I didn't look back. Chara actually wasn't drafted by the Bruins anyway. A lot of these, I think most of his defense wasn't drafted by the Bruins. And then Tim Thomas, their goalie, was a UFA signing, I believe. And so anyway, this is definitely not a team that tanked its way to a cup.
No, they lucked into getting Seguin, and he didn't even really play. I remember that playoffs. I think he was even scratched a game, or like on the 4th line a lot of times. It wasn't like Seguin really, like, it was kind of like cool that Tyler Seguin was coming into the league and doing well, but it wasn't like he was carrying that team at all. I don't think they really needed him in that playoffs, to be honest.
Yeah. So yep.
4-2. 4-2. No tank versus tank. Is where we're at. So next one is the team that shall not be mentioned, the 2012 Los Angeles Kings. What do you have to say about the Kings, Sheng?
So this one looks like a tank team, because obviously they had Drew Doughty, the number 2 pick of the 2008 draft. But and I was a Kings fan back then, guys, so I know they weren't trying to tank for the Doughty pick. That 2007-08 season, before the 2008 draft, that off season, Dean Lombardi, who is also, Sharks fans will know, that's not a guy that's tanking. Anyway, Dean Lombardi, he signed, and these are all, might just be names to you guys now, but these are all pretty good players back then. No superstars, but all good players. Obviously, they signed Brad Stewart as a free agent, so obviously Sharks fans know him. But Ladislav Nagy, Kyle Calder, Tom Preissing, Michael Handzus, who also played for the Sharks. But these are all, again, no superstars, but all good players. And so Dean Lombardi was not trying to tank. It just so happened that the 2007-08 Kings team, all those, most of those guys did not do well on that team. And most of them didn't last. Only guy that lasted on that Kings team was Handzus eventually for a few years there. But anyway, though, so it just didn't work out. Best laid plans, right? And so anyway, you look at the rest of the team and how it was built. Obviously, you have Doughty, number 2 pick, but Kopitar was the 11th. Brown was the 13th. Voinov was the 32nd, second round pick. Jonathan Quick was the 72nd pick. Carter, Richards, Williams, Stoll, Green acquired via trade. Mitchell and Scuderi were 30-something UFA signings. And so I don't think, even though, yes, they did have that number 2 pick, but they just a lot of times, and you're gonna find this in even more examples. You just sort of stumble into that high pick. Your best laid plans go awry, and you end up with it's not so bad because you're trying to win and it doesn't work, and you end up with the number 2 pick and Drew Doughty instead.
Yeah, it's an interesting one also because I think that was also the year that they weren't that good in the regular season, right?
They
That
weren't,
was like they finished like almost borderline not making the playoffs in the Western Conference. I'm pretty sure
They
that was
were
that year.
eighth seed. They were the eighth seed that year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the year that like it really was just kind of a miracle run on top of a good team that was coming around and Drew Doughty. But I don't think I watched the Kings during that time, so I'm going to default to you because you might have watched the Kings,
Oh
and you're
yeah, I
saying
watched a lot
no
of those
thanks.
off. I mean, I know that that's a Stanley Cup run that doesn't that shall not be named on this show, San Jose Hockey Now podcast. But as a Kings fan,
2014
though,
might be worse.
I endured some tough years, and so the
Yeah.
Mark Crawford era, and a lot of really bad Kings teams, mediocre or just awful Kings teams, and so it was not a sight to behold, and I beheld every game. So.
Do you want to call it no tank or tank?
No, it's definitely not a tank because again, they didn't. Dean Lombardi wasn't trying to get the number 2 pick. He was trying to build a team that would be competitive, and they just ended up, being
Yeah.
terrible. Kind of like
Right.
Mike Grier this past year. Try to build
Yeah.
a team that was competitive, and maybe some of the analytics show that they were competitive, but they didn't put up the wins, and so they ended up with a number 4 pick and weren't that far from the number 1. And so
Yeah. So 5-2. 2013, we are at the Chicago Blackhawks again. This is just going to be Hawks Kings, Hawks Kings
Yeah. So that this
for a
one
little while.
we give to the tank because obviously Kane is still a big
Yep.
part of the team. But then the
Sure.
other players that were a big part of it were added along the side, which is what contenders do to kind of stay relevant. Johnny
Yeah.
Adulia was acquired by trade. Michael Roosevelt was UFA, and then they made smart draft picks with later picks. Corey Crawford was the 52nd pick, and Brandon Saad was 43.
Yeah. They continued to their window. I'm going to call it 5-3 that
Sure.
they
Yeah,
did
no,
tank.
definitely yeah, because of Kane. So yeah, for sure.
2014 Kings, same thing. We're calling it no
Same
tank.
thing. Yeah, I mean, again, the key additions to the 2012 Kings, obviously trading for Marian Gaborik, who obviously he was a
Yeah.
high pick back in the day, but they traded for Marian Gaborik at a discount price. And then Jake Muzzin was a big part of that team, but he was drafted by the Penguins a long time ago, but the Penguins didn't sign him. Actually, Tim Thomas, I looked it up. He was drafted by the Quebec Nordiques a long time ago, but the Nordiques didn't sign him, and so both of them were for free agent signings after they weren't signed by their original team.
Yeah. So that calls it at 6-3 because we're calling it no tank. Also, 2014 Kings should have never happened because of the whole reverse sweep thing, and it shouldn't have been there. Anyway, so the
Shouldn't have blown a
next
3-0
three,
lead is what what I would say, and also say to Vegas fans too. Don't blow a 3-0. So that's your fault.
yeah, don't blow threes early. The next 3 winners are all previous winners: Hawks, Penguins, and Penguins. 15, 16, 17. We've called all of these tanking teams
Sure,
before.
and that's perfectly fine. Yeah. So yeah, Kane
So we're
and
stuck at
yeah.
6-6 out of
Ooh,
those 3. I
okay.
mean,
So we're back
there
to
was
6-6. Exciting. Okay.
yeah.
Riveting.
Yeah, they like you were gonna mention that the 2016 Penguins still built around Crosby Malkin, but they traded for Phil Kessel in the
That's a big part
meantime.
of it. And then Matt Murray, yeah.
And Matt Murray kind of like emerged as the goaltender of the future, but not really because he won 2 Stanley Cups and then
Well, the
didn't
goaltender of
become.
now, but not of the future, obviously.
Yeah, it's goaltender of then and then gone somewhere else, many places around the league afterwards. But
Yep.
it's 6-6 headed into the 2018 Capitals, which was one of my favorite Stanley Cup victories of all time, I think.
And yeah, I might get some argument about this, but So obviously Ovechkin was the number one pick, but I don't consider that a tank year because looking back at that's the 2003-04 Capitals team. And
Mhm.
that team still had a lot of great players. It had Yager, it had Robert Lang, Sergei Gonchar, Peter Bondra, Olaf Kolzig in net. Mike Grier was on that team too. And looking back at the Hockey News, I think the Hockey News had them as eighth in the East, and so this doesn't look to me like they're trying to tank for Ovechkin. Just things blow up
Mhm.
in your face, and you end up with the number one pick. So awesome, right? And all there's the rest of the team too. The rest of that 2018 Capitals team. You do have Backstrom, who's the fourth pick of the 2006 draft, but that's after the Capitals. You can say maybe the Capitals did bottom out after they drafted Ovechkin. 2005-06 team, Capitals team wasn't a very good team around Ovechkin, and so they landed the number four pick there. So you can give that one to tanking to some degree, but I'm still going to stick with Ovechkin as the linchpin guy, obviously, and that was not a tank. Other guys, other key parts of the team, you have Braden Holtby, 93rd pick, John Carlson, the 27th pick, Matt Niskanen was a UFA, Dmitry Orlov was 55th. Evgeny Kuznetsov was 26th, and TJ Oshie was a UFA. So I'm going to go no tank on this team, or no tank
Yeah,
on
that's
Ovechkin.
yeah, no tank on Ovechkin. Then they were really, really, really bad afterwards.
They were
But
really bad
it's
in
also like
2005-06. Yeah.
12 years later that they win the cup.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
the Caps like went through this cycle of just like rotating in everybody to try and get a
Sure.
winner out of this. And I don't know, it feels like the magic of, I mean, like Ovechkin and Baxter were making like, $10 million a piece. I mean, I think Baxter was making like six or something, but like they weren't cheap. They weren't like rookies that are on their ELCs or cheap deals. That's why they won the cup kind of thing.
Sure, sure.
And it's so long afterwards. They rotated through so many guys and they were so competitive for so long. Yes, they did have to be bad to get Ovechkin, even though they were good the year before, and they had to be really bad to get Backstrom. But like again, if they draft Derek Brassard instead of Nick Backstrom, then this never happens, and it's not even a conversation point. So
Right, 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 right. Yeah, no,
yeah,
and
I'm
so
gonna say
yeah,
no.
I think too. You make a good point too that the Capitals were. This is not a team that even if Ovechkin was a tank job, they didn't get the immediate dividends, at least in terms of
Mhm,
the big payoff of the Stanley Cup, like the Penguins did. You can argue, and even the Blackhawks, there wasn't too much
mhm.
there wasn't too much turnaround time from drafting Kane to winning a Stanley Cup. But Capitals obviously are not an example of that because they just had to keep grinding and trying to find the right pieces around Ovechkin, and eventually they were able to land the right combination. But it sort of was a magic thing because after that year, they've been kind of a first round fodder or out of the playoffs. So.
Yeah, they've been kind of like just mediocre ever since,
Mhm.
and that's what they really needed to. It's like they missed their opportunities in like the 2010s time period
Right.
where the Caps were really really good, and they got knocked out by like Montreal, I think, in that second round, where Yaroslav Halak was amazing. I think it was 2010 or 2011.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just they couldn't put it together. I'm gonna call it no tank, only because it took so long for them to win the cup, even though they didn't have Backstrom and Ovechkin. So
Yeah.
7-6 is where we're at,
Okay.
and we're almost to the present day.
Yep.
2019 Blues is the next one.
And so their big high pick was Alex Petrangelo, and that was the Dowdy year, so 2008. And
Mhm.
again, I don't consider this because I look at that Blues team. They ended up 33, 36, and 13, which doesn't sound that bad. That's close to 500, but that somehow it still ended up fourth worst in the league. So I don't know, parity or whatever, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, and that team was picked by the Hockey News at the beginning of the season to be a ninth place team. So not a team that was breaking everything down. Had a lot of veterans on the team, at least at the beginning of the season. Paul Correa, Keith Kachuk, Doug Waite, Eric Brewer, Jay McKee, down the line, guys like that, right? And so again, a team that best laid plans, and you end up with the number 4 pick. Otherwise, the rest of that team is built in a lot of different ways. But Jordan Binnington, Colin Parayko, Jay Bouwmeester, Ryan O'Reilly, Braden Shen, Vladimir Tarasenko, David Perron, Jaden Schwartz. Again, there are no top 10 picks in here. Bouwmeester was, but this was, Bouwmeester was a top pick long ago with the Panthers. This is the end of Bouwmeester's career. But otherwise, though, Shen too. Shen was a 5th pick, I believe, by the Kings, but he also took the long way to the Blues too. Went from the Kings to the Flyers, and I think to the Blues. And so this is not a team that is, built by the tank either, in my opinion. So I would say no to the
It's
Blues.
also a miracle run, right? It's like feels like the 2012 Kings, where
Yes.
they were really bad throughout halfway through the year and then took off. And also this was the Stanley Cup for the Sharks, so that the Blues have robbed from them. No, I'm kidding. It was the last year where the Sharks were kind of competitive, and makes me think of all sorts of bad memories about that playoffs. But so that'll be 8-6, I think, in terms of no tank to tank.
Yeah.
Our next 2 winners are the Lightning in 2020-2021.
And this one will be a little controversial because they had back-to-back top picks in Steven Stamkos, the number 1 pick of the 2008 draft, and Victor Hedman, the number 2 pick of the 2009 draft. But once again, though, I'm going to go with the Hockey News' verdict that these teams were not designed to be tank teams. They just ended up bad. The Stamkos year, the 2007-08 Lightning, we're actually coming off. Don't forget not that long ago, the Lightning had won a Stanley Cup. That's a 2004 Lightning, and they still had a lot of players from those teams, and so they had Vinny Lecavalier, Martin St. Louis, Brad Richards still on this team, and so this is not a team that was designed to tank. They actually were supposed, according to the Hockey News, predicted them to be 6th in the East. That's the 2007-08 Lightning that ended up landing Stamkos. And the very next year, the Hedman year, that Lightning team was let's see. Okay, so 10th, but still not. This is not a tank job though, because Lecavalier on his team, San Luis on this team, and so again, I'm not really seeing it. Just best laid plans did not work out, and so I would not call the Lightning those 2 Stanley Cups kind of the result of that. Just again, result of best laid plans blowing up in your face. So
yeah, also a little tough because it's again like 10 years after the fact, or 10, 11 years from when they had those high picks. And they had such good like later picks throughout.
right,
And
that's
they had
true too.
a bunch of guys. They had Kucherov, they had Point, and guys that like were really kind of carrying that team. Like I think the 2021, it wasn't Stamkos like not really even present or like
Yeah,
not really
no, that's a good point too. Yeah, so
I think he wasn't even. I mean, I don't remember the exact details. I don't remember if he was injured or what, but like I just remember he wasn't a very important factor in that team to win it. So, and obviously he's been an important player for them forever, but it wasn't like that's what they built off of was Stamkos's back kind of thing.
right. Though of course, Hedman though was indeed the result of or I'm sorry, he was a big part of those teams. So.
Yeah, he was. And I do remember those Lightning teams. I think they had an issue with goaltending after they got rid of Hobby Bulin, if I remember right. And
yeah, they had
that
Mike Smith, young Mike Smith in goal, John Graham, I believe too. So that might have been more of the cause of their woes that led them to, or that was a big part of the woes that led them to these top picks. But again, it wasn't sort of what you would consider an out and out tank.
No, because it's hard to go from 2004 Stanley Cup winner to terrible team by 2007-08. It's hard to do it, especially when you still have Lecavalier and St. Louis and Brad Richards. So I don't know, kind of on the fence on this one. I think we do 1-1. What if we did one of them as tank, one of them as
No,
not?
no, pick
Because
either way. No, because you have to either claim. I tell you, I don't think looking
Mm.
back, back at the rosters that the Stamkos Hedman years were again,
I think
tank
by the
years by any
rules that
stretch.
we've defined tank, I don't think they tanked. I think they
Yeah,
just were bad, and I
they
don't
just
think
were
they
bad.
meant to
Yeah.
be bad. So 10-6 is where we're at then. Um, with our final two candidates, the Avalanche and the Golden Knights. Let's do the Avalanche first.
Yeah, and the Avalanche is going to be actually kind of a mixed bag because their very high picks were McKinnon, number one of the
Yep.
2013 draft, Landeskog, number one of the 2011 draft, and Mikhail Makar, number four of the 2017 draft. And actually, looking back on those years, I don't think I would call the Avalanche. From 2010-11. They had made the playoffs the year before, and they just weren't good, and so they ended up with the Landeskog pick. And then the
Mhm.
year before, the McKinnon pick, 2011-12. Again, they just ended up bad because the year before they had 88 points and they just missed out on the playoffs. And then the next season they kind of fall flat on their face and they end up with the number one pick and Nathan McKinnon. The year that led to Makar though is I think famous that Colorado actually tried their best to, at least the perception is that they tried their best to lose so they can get the number one pick of that draft, and they ended up losing the lottery, and losing out I believe on Heischer, right? And Heischer
Yep.
or Patrick.
Yep.
And the loss out on those guys. But then of course they ended up with Kale McCarr number four, which is more than a consolation prize. Like he would be probably the
Yeah.
consensus number one of that draft. So yeah, so I'm gonna give that one more on the tank side. I would say that particular Avalanche team that lets in Makar. And so, okay, so you have one guy that's a big part of it, then yeah, then then
Yeah,
then
I
then
think we
you
have
kind
to
of
give
nod
it
to the
to
tank there.
I think we have to give it to the tank.
Yeah,
They were bad a lot of those years, and when you have two number one overall picks, and you got McCarr at 4. Before that, they had Matt Duchene at 3, even though he wasn't part of that team. That like they were bad for a couple of years there, and then he had some good years a few times in there, but like they were bad. I'm gonna give him the tank. I
okay.
think 10-7 is the count right now. And our last team, which will definitely not be a tank because it would be hard to tank when you have never not made the play. No, 1 year they did
One
not make the
year,
playoff.
but yeah.
The Golden Knights in 2023. So
Yeah, there's no
10 to
point. Yeah, yeah. Obviously, Jack Eichel was the number two pick a long time ago, but they traded for him. So
Yeah, they traded for him. They traded for everybody. They signed everybody. They either acquired them through the expansion draft. What was their only draft pick that really played? Nick Hague was their
second round
only
pick too.
actual. Yeah, second round pick Nick Hague was their only draft pick that was on that team. So
And obviously, their
hard to
team was
say.
built in a weird way too, where they were gifted very good players in expansion draft, like Theodore and William Carlson and
Mhm.
Riley. All the guys that kind of came through
Much
that,
of
or
all that.
because of the expansion draft. So
All right, so final count for Stanley Cup winners is 11 no tanks with some like questionable ones in there that may have been bad for a while, and then 7 definite tanks is what we're calling it.
something like
Which
that.
it goes to show like yes, some of them were tank jobs, but not every single one. And honestly, in our thing, the majority were not. They just were teams that were bad at the right time and picked the right player,
Right.
kind of thing.
Right,
So
and that may well happen with this Sharks team. They signed some players that are intriguing, but this is not a team. I mean, I think most people would predict them to be. They're definitely one of the favorites for the number one pick. But if they end up with the number one pick, if we did the same exercise years later, and Macklin Celebrini has led the Sharks somehow to a Stanley Cup championship, I don't think we're going to look back at the 2023-24 season as, oh, they tried to tank, they tried to they gamed the system to get that number one pick. No, they tried within the restrictions of their salary cap, within sort of their just what was reasonable for them, and sort of where the franchise's health is. Where it's not a year where, just for example, right, like all their signings and trades kind of make sense because they're all these short-term ones. They're not trading for, say, a William Nylander and then signing him to an 8-year contract, because that makes zero sense for where the franchise is right now. Same with letting Timo Meier go, is the same concept, where the guy was entering his prime, but the Sharks are not in sort of a prime contention spot, so the timelines aren't meeting there. And so, yeah, I think we're gonna look back on the Sharks team, whatever happened, whatever pick they get, and be it the number one, or they play better than expected, but not a tank team though.
Yeah, and we're gonna get to just some teams that were good, but or were like perennial contenders, but
Yeah.
didn't win the cup here in a second. I want to make an interesting point, or what I think is an interesting point. A team like Buffalo has been, obviously they traded Jack Eichel away.
Hmm.
They've been pseudo tanking for like a decade. They've
And definitely
had
the McDavid year, McDavid Eichel year, that was a pretty transparent,
even
tank
yeah,
attempt. Yeah.
but even before that, they started tearing that thing down. They've had 10 top 10 picks since 2013,
Hmm.
including 2 second overall picks and a first overall pick,
Right.
and they still have not made the playoffs. 10 top 10 picks in a decade, and they still have not made the playoffs in
Yeah.
that time period. So it just like, I don't know, when you really tear it down, and those like 2015 teams, when they wanted to get McDavid, they were the worst team that was in the NHL for a long time.
Yeah.
Really,
And
really
let's
bad.
acknowledge McDavid and the Oilers, and they were bad for a long time, and now they are
Yeah, for
actual
sure.
contenders. So there's a
Mhm.
flip side to it. And again, we're not obviously high picks are good. Like,
Sure.
no one's arguing that point. But again, though, like, winning teams are built more than on just high picks and tanks. So that's
Yeah.
overall what we're getting at here.
I think you really have to pick the right player and be in the right position at the
Mm.
same time. Because again, 10 top 10 picks by the Sabres and no playoffs for 10 years or 12 years, however long it's been. Not to pick on the Sabres or anything like that. And similar thing with Arizona, like they have like so many top 10 picks in the past, 10, 15 years, and they've made the playoffs on and off, but not really have gone
Yeah.
any kind of distance with it. So either way, let's talk a little bit about some of the non-winners, and then we'll get out of here and get to the Mario Ferraro interview. But first one we're going to talk about is the Anaheim Ducks post their bunch of dudes from the 90s Cup win, and that would be like the 2015, 2017, both of which made the Western Conference Finals. Stanley or Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, and just to bring it back to the original point, the reason why we're going to talk about some of these teams is that, once again, I think GM's job is actually, GM's job isn't to win a Stanley Cup. That's like, if everything works out, you win that Stanley Cup. But it's more just to build a team that's in that conversation regularly. And you may not win it, but you build a team that's good enough to win it, and that's all you can do. You build the best team you can, and then hope that you get lucky, basically. And so, anyway, so you do that. If Mike Grier does that, like Doug Wilson did, I think Sharks fans should be very satisfied, even if it doesn't end with the Stanley Cup. But anyway, so these Duck teams, 2015, 2017, they stand out as teams that weren't built by high picks. And I didn't look into the kind of the like, they have one high pick here, Hampus Lindholm, who's the sixth pick. I didn't look into that year if Anaheim quote unquote tanked or whatever, right? But you just look at this team, and I don't think this is a team that is sort of built in that way. That key players on his team. Getzlaf Perry that we mentioned, 19th and 28th picks of the 2003 draft. Ryan Kessler was acquired via trade. Ricard Raquel, who was a bigger part of the 2017 team. He was a late first-round pick. Jakob Silfverberg, acquired via trade. Boscheman came back, trade. I mentioned Lindholm, Sammy Vatanen, the 109th pick. Cam Fowler was a high pick, but not that high. He was the 12th pick. And then their goaltending, they had two different goalies for these teams. Frederick Anderson, the 87th pick, and John Gibson, the 39th pick. And so again, not a team that some bounces, right? They beat the they beat the Blackhawks in 2015, and we take one of Patrick Kane and the Hawks tank quote unquote championships off the board. And that's part of the point, that you just build a team that's right there, that's competitive, and you just kind of hope for the best.
Yeah, it's and they were good before, but then now they've kind of gone through that downswing where I don't think they're tanking necessarily, because they actually have been doing some strange moves to try and remain competitive,
Yeah.
but they are in a downswing, and they have some good high picks, and it's hard to say that even now that they're tanking, because they're kind of like in this middle ground kind of thing. So next one would be the Bruins that we'll talk about, which Bruins had the 2011 run, and they kind of just been good ever since. They had the 2013 Eastern Conference Finals, 2019 Stanley Cup Finals, but a team also not really built on the tank still, even to this day.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize, they, of course, all these teams have Stanley Cup Finals or Stanley Cup championships to lean on, that they can talk about, unlike the Sharks, right? But nonetheless, though, the Bruins, right, after they won the championship in 2011, but 2013-19, just looking at some of the guys, right, and some of the guys we've already mentioned, right, Bergeron, Lucic, Krejci, Marchand were later picks. Pastrnak, a big part of the 2019 final team. He was the 25th pick. He was a first-round pick, but a late one. Charlie Coyle, a former Sharks first-round pick, also was acquired via trade for the Bruins, but he also was a late pick back in the day. And then you look at their defense. We already talked about Chara, Seidenberg, Ferentz, and Boychuk. Another big part of the 2019 Bruins was obviously Torrey Krug, but that guy, he was an NCAA free agent. And then if you look at their goaltending, Tuukka Rask, who was acquired via trade, but he also was a later first round pick by the Maple Leafs back in the day. And so again, definitely not a team that I would say that is built by their high picks the Bruins are probably the best example of team that, and right now, they're sort of the modern day Sharks or Lou Lamoriello's Devils, or the Red Wings, in terms of just sustaining the success, year after year. And of course, they're kind of facing their toughest test now, the losing with Bergeron retiring especially. So, I'm not know if it's going to last too much longer for them, but it has been a great run.
Yeah, it's it does feel kind of like the cupboard is kind of run bare, and
we'll see.
Without a lot of center depth there, it's kind of an issue. But Bruins fans know all about that. Like, they've been told that ever since Bergeron turned 32. They were like, "Who's going to be your center? What's going to happen next?" kind of thing. So we'll see. Maybe they'll pull a rabbit out of their hat somewhere and trade for somebody that's going to fill their center depth for the next decade or something like that.
Right.
They do still have some good pieces there. Anyway, next one would be the Carolina Hurricanes. Also have a previous Stanley Cup, but a long time ago. They made the Eastern Conference Finals in 2019, the 23 Eastern Conference Finals, and poised to make a pretty good run this year, it looks like, at least.
They're a team that's been in the playoffs for the last 5 years, and they look like a team that just is going to be good for for a long time, kind of. And if their team, even if they may end up being the Sharks of this era, where very good looking team, but they may not come out with any championships. But you can't really fault how they've been built. I mean, look at okay, so just gonna rattle off some of their key players and how these guys were acquired. And these are two different Hurricanes teams 4 years apart. So some of these names, matter more for one edition of the Hurricanes as opposed to the other. But Sebastian Aho was a second round pick, 35th. Tervel Teravainen was acquired via trade. Jordan Stahl also via trade. Justin Williams was a much older UFA. Martin Netchis was a 12th pick. Seth Jarvis, a 13th pick. High picks, but not the tank variety picks, right? Like, again, if you're going for the tanking line with the 12th pick, that's all you just hear complaining all over the place, right? But obviously, if you pick well, that 12th pick can be better than your number one pick. But anyway, so their one high pick was Svechnikov, Andrei Svechnikov, but that came in a year 2017-18 where the Hurricanes were a 500 team, not a team that really looked like it was tanking. And you look at the rest of the key players from these two conference finals teams. Slavin was 120th pick. Justin Falk was a 37th pick. Brett Pesce was a 66th pick. And then a lot of trades. Dougie Hamilton was acquired via trade. Brent Burns, obviously from the Sharks. And Brady Shea was also acquired via trade. And finally, their goaltenders, Peter Mrazek and Frederick Anderson, both UFA signings. And so, again, not a team that is not a power that has been built, even though they have Svechnikov. But overall, though, not a power that's been built consistently by trying to be, as bad as possible.
No, and they also, I think the interesting comparable here is that, like, Raleigh is a not like a traditional hockey market, and they probably and I've been to the Raleigh Arena. I visit Raleigh all the time. It's a great city, and I just don't think it's very hockey focused. And it feels like the Sharks kind of have said this in the past, whether the market in San Jose doesn't really constitute a rebuild, and they want to remain competitive. So I feel like Raleigh is kind of a similar thing where they want to be competitive just because they want fans to go to the game. And if they have to sit through a very, very long rebuild, it might not attract them for very long, kind of thing.
And one thing I want to add too about the Svechnikov pick, that 2008 draft lottery, the Svechnikov draft lottery, they jumped up. They won the lottery and jumped up 9 spots.
Sure.
So,
that's
not
really
they weren't trying to tank to get Svechnikov.
Yeah.
They just lucked out. Yeah, and they won the lottery. I think that's the Rasmus Dahlin draft. So so yeah,
and he was a great consolation prize in that draft. He looked ready for jumping into the NHL like really quickly. Just from his draft year, he was pretty ready. Anyway, so I think they're just a team that's made really, really smart moves, and they've had a couple of high picks, but not too many. And obviously the whole Aho thing with Montreal, and then getting Kotkaniemi back is interesting. But yeah, not a tank team, just a team that's really built out from just good drafting overall. Next one is an interesting one because they're kind of an enigma. In terms of how are they this good every year, but also how are they this good at drafting every year in terms of their recent draft. But this will be the Stars, the Dallas Stars 2020 Stanley Cup final. I think that was the bubble year. Was that right?
Yep, it was. Yeah.
And then the 2023 Western Conference Finals, Dallas Stars, with our beloved former Shark Joe Pavelski at the helm.
So UFA signing, right? And one guy I want to get out of the way because everyone's going to say, "Oh, Heiskanen, right? Number 3 pick of the 2017 draft,
Sure.
Awesome player. Redraft goes right behind McCarr, probably, right? But again, actually, the Dallas Stars won the lottery that year too. They had the 8th worst record, and they jumped to number 3. And so again, this is their sole kind of top top pick, that has kind of that they drafted that they've built their team around. Otherwise, Jamie Benn was 129th pick. Alex Radulov was a big part of the 2020 team. UFA signing. Guryanov, who's gone now from them, was a 12th pick. Rupe Hintz, right? Still a great player, was a 49th pick. Tyler Seguin, he's back in the conversation, but he was acquired via trade. Jason Robertson was a 39th pick. So look at that, two of your best young forwards here, Hintz and Robertson, right? Second round picks. Then we get the Heiskanen, right? Who I just talked about. John Klingberg, a long time ago. Big part of the 2020 team. Obviously not last year's team, but he was 131st pick. Esa Lindell was a 74th pick. Going to goaltending, Anton Khudobin, who backstopped the 2020 Stars. He was a UFA signing. Jake Ottinger, first-round pick, but a 26th pick. So, again, a team that's just been built with a lot of smart drafting, a lot of great drafting in tough positions, and not trying to bottom out.
Yeah, you get your number one winger, your number one center, your number one goaltender, all from like picks 26, 39, 49. And then you also draft like Wyatt Johnston, Maverick Bork, Logan Stankoven, all in like the later round or later back half of the first and second. Like, man, Stars just really know how to draft on top of also still having, Ben, Seg, and Pavelski, who are good. And that's how they have kind of turned over their team in the past couple of years, but not a tank by any means. They had Heiskanen, like you said.
They won the lottery to get him, just like the Hurricanes with Svechnikov.
Yep, they just got lucky.
You need luck. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you need luck. And this is also to say that the Hurricanes and Stars still haven't won the cup with this current core. Both of these teams have prior cups, but still not with the current core.
But again, though, the whole idea is that, if you're Mike Grier, if you're a Sharks fan, you're looking for what kind of team you want to build. You want to build a team, I think, like the Hurricanes, like the Stars, that's going to contend for a while. You don't want to be a flash in the pan contender. You don't want to invest and maybe sign a bunch of free agents and get a year or two out of the team. No, you want to build something that's good for, like Doug did it. You want a team that's good for 5, 10, 15 years, if possible.
Yeah, 100%. Got a few more to talk about, and we'll actually get to the Sharks here in a minute to round out our episode. But let's talk about the New York Rangers, which was a team that famously actually said we're going to be bad to all their fans at some point, which is an interesting thing. Then they sent out that letter.
Right.
But they made the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals, the 2014 Stanley Cup Finals, and the 2015 Eastern Conference Finals, all in this little short span where the Rangers were pretty good, but not good enough to win the cup.
Yeah. And that letter, of course, was sent after this run of teams. And this team actually was built in a very interesting way. And again, this is not the usual way to build a team, but this team wasn't really built with even first round picks, really. You look at some of the stars from these 3 Ranger teams. Brad Richards was a very expensive UFA signing. Marian Gaborik was, I believe, also a UFA signing. Ryan Callahan was 127th pick. Derek Stepan was a 51st pick. Martin St. Louis was a trade with the Lightning. Matt Zuccarello was a really great European free agent signing. Rick Nash was a number 1 pick a long time ago, obviously, but he was acquired via trade. Derek Brassard was acquired via trade. Looking at their defense, Daniel Girard was actually a great story. AHL UFA, kind of like Barclay Goodrow or something like that. Ryan McDonough was acquired via trade. Mark Stahl is the one guy that the Rangers drafted in the first round. That was the 12th. He was the 12th pick of his draft. And then finally, 2 key defensemen in these Ranger runs: Anton Strawman, who was a UFA signing. Dan Boyle, obviously Sharks fans know him, was a 2015 UFA, or I'm sorry, for the 2015 Rangers team. He was a UFA signing too. And of course, all these 3 teams were held together by Henrik Lundqvist and the 205th pick of his draft. And that's actually a fun question too, because Pavelski was also 205th pick. So best 205th pick ever. I think those are going to be our 2 choices. So.
Hard to say. Oh, yeah, really interesting team, or teams, I should say. Just a lot of UFAs. It felt very New York Ranger-ish to go after all of these big UFAs every year to try and make their team get over that hump. But you're right, not a lot of first-round picks. Definitely not a tanking team. Just a compilation of a bunch of stars that were pretty close but never really got there. And I think that's also why they felt comfortable afterwards saying like, okay, we're going to be bad, because most of these guys weren't guys that they invested a lot of draft capital in or invested a lot of some of them trade capital, obviously, but a lot of UFAs. So they could just be like, all right, we're jettisoning this guy and this guy and this guy to rebuild kind of thing. So now, has it worked out? Because they've got Kako and Lafreniere from the 2 drafts that they were super, super bad in, who are not super, super good.
Well, it hasn't worked out
Wow.
yet. Yeah. So
That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
It's tough to say.
these kind of Frankenstein teams they built in the 2012, centered or held together by the linchpin Lundqvist. Those are obviously better results than the Lafreniere Kako teams.
Yeah, they haven't really found that linchpin really. Good teams, but really haven't. And obviously they've had a couple of successful teams since then, but it hasn't gotten them too far yet. But let's round out the episode with the San Jose Sharks, if you've heard of them. The San Jose Sharks were a perennial contender for many, many years after trading for Joe Thornton. They made the 2010 Western Conference Finals, the 2011 Western Conference Finals, the 2016 Stanley Cup Finals. Were the Sharks created by the tank? That's a good question.
And yeah, you look at
And a good pun.
You look at how the team was built. The only, I guess, arguable one is Marlowe, who was the number 2 pick of the 97 draft. But Joe Thornton was acquired via trade with pieces that great good draft picks by the Sharks. Sturm, Stewart, right? Pavelski, obviously we talked about 205th pick. Logan Couture was they traded up for him, so that's, even though he's a high pick at number 9. Ryan Clough, 176. 175th pick. Danny Heatley was acquired via trade. Tomas Hertl was a 17th pick. Look at the defense, right? Blake, Dan Boyle, Brent Burns acquired via trade. Vlasic was a 2nd-round pick, 35th. Doug Murray was a 241st pick. Justin Braun was a 201st pick. Paul Martin, UFA signing. And you look at it, they had 3 different goalies for these 3 teams. Nabokov, obviously 219th pick. Niemi was a UFA signing, and Martin Jones was a 1st-round pick. But yeah, ultimately, no. I don't think that this team even was even. I mean, Marlowe's the only one that you would argue, because looking back at the team, the Sharks team that led to the Marlowe pick wasn't particularly a good team, though they made some. Looking at their offseason signings, and the GM was Dean Lombardi, and that's not his MO to have done that. And that offseason, I'm just draw out some names that you guys might remember, but that offseason before the Marlowe season, before the 96-97 season, they brought in some pretty good players. Todd Gill, veteran goalie, Kelly Rudy, kind of end of his career, but still veteran guy there, and Ally Frady, who actually was a very good player in his prime. And so I don't think, again, that's a team that was trying to be as bad as possible. And so I'm going to also say that this is a not really a tank situation.
Yeah, they were bad that year, and then I think the next year they drafted Brad Stewart like 3rd overall or 2nd overall.
But that definitely was not, because that's 97-98. That offseason they brought in Daryl Sutter as a coach. They brought in free agents like I think Tony Granato and Bernie Nichols and Marty McSorley. So 100%. That team was not trying to they
were trying to compete.
Yeah. And also too, that pick I think ended up it was somebody else's pick. That's why they got the number 3 pick. So it wasn't even their pick originally anyway. So So yeah, so that pick definitely would not come under consideration. Also, too, talking about something that you mentioned, like Marlowe's pick was 97, and so we're talking 13 years later to make that a conference finals trip 13 years later, and so it's really not sort of
Yeah. And
let's tank to win,
and
in
that was
5
never
years.
even, and the other argument is that was never really even Doug Wilson's MO. Like he
Yeah,
was never,
it
when
wasn't
they,
Dean's and it wasn't Doug's. Yeah,
not at all. He's a trading guy. Like he trades for the guys that he wants on his team to win the cup. That's always been his way of winning or trying to win a cup. So to call them a tanking team would be disingenuous, I feel.
yeah.
So because the best player was acquired by a trade for Brad Stewart and all that, but it's definitely not a tanking team that led to the Sharks being that good for long. It was just one of the best trades of all time. That's kind of it. But anyway, this has kind of been a rundown of memory lane for everybody. And just, I think it's important, like you mentioned, a lot of people are worried that the Sharks are going to finish third overall or third worst overall, and because they're not going to get number one or number two, that they're going to be bad for the next 10
Or
years.
they even end up with the
Yeah,
13th pick, right?
or they get the 11th or
Yeah,
12th or whatever. And the end of the day is the Sharks are not close to competing. They're going to need a lot of good draft picks that are going to have to pan out. I would have loved if they got Connor Bedard.
yeah.
Because
And
I do
again,
feel like Connor Bedard is special, and sometimes these special players really do turn around a team,
sure.
like your Patrick Kanes, your Sidney Crosbys.
Sure,
Um,
sure. No one is
but
disputing. It's nice to get a high pick. It's not a be
not the
all
only
end
one.
all. Like there's so many ways to build a good team. And my final thought, I want to talk a little bit about the Sharks this year, right? And
Mhm.
um, you know, I think that there's something to be said about. I mentioned building that culture, and I think that's good, and that kind of has an effect that permeates throughout the franchise in the coming years. I want to go back, actually, go back to classic Sharks thing, the 96 and the 97 Sharks, right? 96, 97, 97, 98 Sharks. Dean Lombardi signed a lot of older free agents. I mentioned some of their names already: Aya Frady, Gill, Nichols, McSorley, Granado, guys to add leadership, add gravitas to the room. Kelly Rudy, right, who Patrick Marleau roomed with his very first year, or lived in Kelly Rudy's house, right? These guys are really important to establishing kind of a winning culture, I think, and those things aren't always tangible, and they can't always be measured by wins and losses. But maybe to some degree they can be too, because the Sharks from 97, 98 on, they had I think a 5-year run where the record kept getting better every single year. That culminated in 2002 when they almost made it to the Western Conference Final. And so anyway, yeah, I feel like a Mike Grier is doing something akin to that. Especially last year when he brought in Matt Benning and Nico Sturm and guys that help establish the culture. And this year maybe taking a little more gambles with these players. Not guys so much that you expect to be the leaders of the room like he did last year. But anyway, I think it's important overall to establish that culture. And so I think, okay, so this is what happens and this is how I see it. It's a very simplistic view of seeing it, but basically the Sharks team is better than expected. Then I think guys like William Eklund, Thomas Bordeleau, younger players, Mario Ferraro, even, right? Just 24, right? Nikolai Knyzhov, guys like that, they benefit from being on a team that is in a playoff hunt, that maybe even ekes out a wild card spot. I think that's all very, very valuable for them. And chances are, if the Sharks are good this year, or a lot better than expected, is because younger guys like William Eklund were good, or Mario Ferraro surprised us with a little more offense, or Nikolai Kniz, guys like that down the line,
Yeah.
younger guys were very good. And if the team is bad, then okay, guess what? You get a high pick. So it works out kind of either way, I think. And ultimately, with these picks, whether it's the second pick or the 22nd pick, you just got to draft well. And I know the odds are better with a higher pick, but it's not, again, it's not so cut and dry that like all you want is that high pick. Damn the rest of the roster, damn the culture, all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's that simple.
Yeah, I'm sure the 2012 and 2014 Kings are like, damn, I really wish we had a better pick than Kopitar at 11. It's like,
Right.
no, you got Kopitar at 11.
Obviously, the Sharks had a
You know,
chance to draft Kopitar. Yeah.
exactly. But like one of these a lot of these picks need to pan out because they cannot all just be top 5 picks. So these might be the years, if we do better than expected, that we trial a bunch of players that might be on future rosters or trade them or what have you. But and we might still get somebody slam dunk at the 14th overall pick. Who knows? Like, Seabrook was a 14th overall pick.
Right.
Like
No,
his dudes that are
Tommy
integral
Hurdle,
in the future.
17th pick. Yeah.
Yeah. So don't be bummed out. I'm a little still bummed out that they didn't get Bedard, but I will get over it eventually, probably. But keep in mind we had the chance to get Connor McDavid in 2015 and we didn't. I think we were 9th worst in the NHL or something like that.
I
Didn't
mean,
get it.
I would argue that the equation does matter a little more when it's a generational guy like the McDavid, where I kind of get the tanking more so, right? But Bedard, I don't know if Bedard is even quite to the McDavid class, right? And I'm pretty sure Celebrini, I mean, he might end up being in that class, but at this point, he's not considered in that class, right? And so, these aren't guys to, again, Connor McDavid, I get. Sidney Crosby, I get. Eric Lindros back in the day, I get that. But most of your number one picks are not, those guys, generational kind of guys. Yeah.
Sure. So. Yeah. Most of them are not that level of prospect. Some are, and then sometimes it's the 4th guy that gets it.
Right,
so
Cale Makar.
Don't fret. Yeah, exactly. So let's hear from Mario Ferraro to end things, and I think we've rambled on a long time. So the next couple of weeks we'll have some coverage of the training camp starting, the rookie face-off, and all that. So hope you all have a good week.
Bye.
That's fine. Bye.
Let's get the interview officially going. The most important question is I got to ask you about Wilder. Such a cute dog. So tell us all about Wilder.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. He's a great dog. Me and McKenna, my girlfriend, we got Wilder, I think in March or February or so, at about 2 months. He's 9-month-old German Shepherd, long-haired, all black. I never had a dog before, so it's a little bit of an adjustment, and he's a big dog, very high energy. So it is nice, but it's a sense of responsibility that I enjoy, that me and McKenna both enjoy. So we love him. He's a cute dog. We're trying to train him and get him a little bit more dialed in, and working on like him listening and with recall and stuff like that, because he is a bigger dog. And I ran into a couple instances where he ran over to other people and they were maybe scared for a second, but I'm like, no, he's really gentle. Like, he's a nice dog. So he's a great dog. We got really lucky. But yeah, Wilder, that's just, McKenna came up with that name.
Yeah, I was going to ask the next question. Why? Where does that come from?
I don't know. I feel like it kind of stuck. Yeah. He's not really that wild. Like, he's pretty tame. Like, he's pretty chill. So it kind of works out. Like, little tricks you. He's good. He's good.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, it has the sort of the name that makes you think one thing, but you keep the people guessing, right? Keep the people guessing.
100%. Yeah, I feel like it's pretty. If I could say this, it's pretty badass. So I like it.
You mentioned that you didn't have dogs growing up. So what kind of got you into getting a dog here?
It was more so McKenna that always had dogs, so she really wanted one. But I also, my aunt, she moved away for half a year, up to a year or so. So we took care of her dog while she did. When I was about, I don't know, maybe 15, 14 or so, maybe younger. But his name was Hunter, and he was like a little wiener dog. But he was really cute, and I just enjoyed having him around. So it's like I knew that I would like having a dog around. They're really affectionate and make you feel good when you come home. They always say hi. They're never mad at you, which is nice. So it's a pretty good feeling. But yeah, no, it's nice having them around, and I don't know. It's just I knew I would like to have a dog.
Yeah. That was kind of the same thing with me. I had a dog, or I just adopted a dog a couple of years ago, and I hadn't had a dog for most of my life, for a long time. I had one when I was like a kid, right? And just sort of like always happy to see you.
Yeah.
Changes your life. You know,
That's still good.
happier with me than my wife is. You know, right?
They're always in a good mood.
Right,
you know?
right,
You can have your arguments with your partner here and there, but you know your dog's always gonna love you.
Exactly.
Even if you're mad at him sometimes. So it's good. It's a good feeling.
So I saw that you had Wilder up with you in Ontario. So I assume you must have driven then right back, right? So how long did it drive?
Yeah, that drive was like probably 30. It's like 37 total, but we split it up. Actually, I drove 2 hours to start. Went to go see Jumbo at his hometown, and then because he lives like a couple hours from me from King City, and then from there was 15 hours. We went to Minnesota, and we stayed. McKenna's family's there, so we stayed there for about seven to 10 days, and I did some training there and stuff. And then from there we did it straight. It's like 29 hours. And that was tough. Yeah. That was tough. But I wanted to get it done. We did it in like 33 hours, so we only rested for like 2 to 4 hours. Okay. I have a tent on top, so I pitched a tent, rested in a rest area there, slept for a couple hours, and then we kept going. I just wanted to get back quick, didn't want to take too much time off this close to the season. So. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so that was a long one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I learned all this stuff because your youngest plugs, YouTube is back in full. Is that back in full effect? Are we going to see some videos?
It is going right now, but I did, so like on the way home, I did do a trip, and I kind of talked about that on my channel, but I did do a trip over 3 weeks. So that was my 3-week break, was traveling and going to see national parks through Utah, went through Colorado, Indiana Dunes State Park, like went to a bunch of different places. So that was more of like the enjoyment side of the travel part.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you mentioned Jumbo and visiting him now. We're not going to be, most of us aren't going to be lucky enough to ever visit Jumbo's palatial estate. So tell us something about his palatial estate. And
well, you'll definitely see him around the rink, as you can already see him. He's here, and he, you know, he's in love with the game, right? Yeah. So you're always going to see him around the rink somewhere. But no, he's great. I've always had a good relationship with Jumbo. He's always been so kind, and so you know, he's always invited me in to spend time with his family or his friends. Like when I went to his hometown, I just feel like I'm part of his friend group, and I grew up with those guys, and it's really, really cool. So he's just a good friend, and it's nice to still be in touch with him, and I'm even luckier to be able to see him now every day. Before he wasn't in San Jose, so but it's cool. It's definitely cool. It's a privilege for sure. Yeah.
What's it like? You know, is he bringing that energy to practice? Yeah, the captain skates out here.
He always does. He always brings the energy. He's giving his tips and pointers too, which we obviously value so much. And no, it's his energy is always on a high level. Yeah.
But you deflected from my number one question: is your video channel back? Is it back?
It is going. Yeah. I'm trying to stay as consistent as I can, but it is going again. Yeah.
There's a gap there. There's a year, and then all of a sudden all this content got 2 videos.
It was
like 10 days. Yeah.
There was a little bit of a gap. I didn't really find that time. I didn't know. I wanted to make sure that I was enjoying what I was putting out and make sure I know what I want to put out there. So I took some time away, but I'm back into it.
Okay, awesome. We're looking forward to seeing more of that. And one of the things I saw in your video is I saw McKenna singing SOB. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
But I didn't see you singing though. So
No, I'm not much of a karaoke guy. Yeah, so I struggle. I'm not a great singer, so I try and stay away from the mic.
Okay. Well, I'm not either. So I mean, can you get lured onto the stage? A few pops.
I can maybe get lured on there.
Okay. Okay. What would be your song be, if any?
Ooh, that's a hard choice. I might have to get back to you on that
one,
Shanger.
I'll have to ask you on that one, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe our winning song or something. I don't know. Maybe we can throw that. We'll see.
Okay. Well, I gotta get to some hockey stuff just to kind of close off here. Obviously, the Sharks, tough season last season. But, now you've been here. It's been about 2 weeks since you've been back in San Jose. You've been working out with a lot of the guys, and a lot of new guys are coming in. So what are you seeing from the new guys or some of the younger players, too? Just, what's sort of exciting you about what you're seeing out there right now?
I think just right off the bat, our relationship, it feels good to come in here and already with some of the new guys that I've never met before. We're going golfing today and stuff, and like we already feel pretty close, and there's a lot of smiles around the rink and stuff like that. Like you said, it wasn't the year we wanted last year, but I think that there's a good balance of having new guys and guys that are still here that want to redeem themselves, and guys that are new coming in that are excited to make a change. So I think that it's a pretty good all-around feeling right now. It feels like a fresh start, and I think the room is really excited. There's still a lot of guys that still need to get here. We're still pretty early from camp time, but it feels good right now so far. It's good.
And as a alternate captain, is one of the things that you're trying to do is trying to integrate guys who are just coming in like Mike Hoffman. I saw out there Leon Gavanka, Giovanni Smith. Those guys. Trying to get them to go golfing, just get everybody to sort of get to know each other a little bit, right?
Yeah. I mean, some of those guys haven't been in the league for too long, and then some of them, like Hoffman, have been in the league for a while, right? So they know how to fit in and stuff like that. They're not nervous with this kind of change, and so they're teaching me a few things here and there about getting things going and taking initiative to do stuff like that. And that's something that I want to do more of, and I think that it's a good start to have that early bonding time and have a good relationship, not only at the rink but also away from the rink and stuff like that. So I think we got a good group of guys, good character guys that want that and look forward to those things. So I think it's important for us.
Any of the new guys going golfing today?
Me, Hoffman, and Benny's not new, but he's coming. And one of our good friends is taking us to a course of his, so it's pretty cool. Yeah.
One of the things that was said about the team last year is, obviously, again, the results weren't what you guys wanted, but it was usually a positive, walking in, it was usually a positive atmosphere. The coaching staff obviously helped set that, but also too the guys in the room. And so that's, whatever happens, on the ice this year, like that's something that you're still trying to keep up, obviously, right?
100%, yeah. I think that our attitude all around is going to be, will help reflect, good performance on the ice. If we're negative, it's going to bring out negative results. So I think, being positive is the number one thing. And I think that that's something we're going to focus on early on. And that'll, fuel some good performance on the ice and hopefully some good success.
And what do you see from the young players out there? Eklund, Mukumadulin, and anyone else kind of catch your eye? Or Kavanka, guys you don't know too well. Yeah,
I'm impressed with those guys. I thought Eki looked really good today. He was wheeling out there. He was dishing the puck real well.
Yeah, I saw a spinorama backhand pass to Burrows. Yeah.
No, they're all they're fitting in really well early on. It is pre-camp, so we still got some ways to go, but. I'm excited. These are like little glimpses that you get excited to see from other guys.
And a big story, obviously, for the Sharks this summer is Erik Karlsson getting traded, and just how this is one of those things where you guys I think sort of knew it was going to happen, of course, right from the end of the season on. But just like how did you sort of did you keep up on it? Were you checking your phone, checking Elliot Friedman, on that kind of stuff, or just it was going to happen? It was going to happen. So just anyway, you talk about sort of just how you handled that, and also just Erik, a guy that was liked in the room and whatnot, just missing him, and obviously important on the ice too.
Yeah, it's it's something that if it's going to happen, it's kind of out of our control as players. I think we're more so guys are texting Erik than looking at the tweets from Elliot Friedman. Obviously we have that relationship with him, but he had a lot of success last year, and he had a lot of awards coming his way, so there were text messages and congratulations that were sent his way. We were also proud of him, but at the end of the day, that kind of stuff we can't really control. It's unfortunate, right? Like any teammate losing a teammate that you've had for a few years now, and such a great player like Carl that not only myself but everyone in the room has learned from over the last few years, or whoever's played with them for a longer extended period of time. It's never easy to see someone go, but it happens, and it's something that we kind of have to look forward and see how we can help our team get better despite losing such a great player, such a great asset.
And just a couple more for you. Your time's okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So obviously losing Erik, there's a lot more weight for a lot of ice time, obviously, but also you guys had to take on more responsibility, more weight. And I know for yourself over the last couple of years, I think there's been sort of a mix of you wanted to do more, but sometimes maybe you're trying to do too much. You're doing things that aren't kind of your game. And so anyway, so where's that balance this year just for you? What do you want to add, but then also what do you want to kind of not overextend yourself in a way?
Yeah, I think you you pretty much said it. Like, I just want to focus on playing my game and doing what I do best for this team. That's something that the Sharks want from me as well. I'm not focused on trying to be a different player. I just want to be the best at the things that I bring, and that's the main focus for me this year. I think that it's up to the management and stuff like that for them to put the pieces in place, and for us to just do our job and go out there and play good hockey. And I trust that from them above, and they got to be able to trust me that I'm going to go out there and do my job. So that's what I'm focused on.